stay with that story. But take a look at this new poll suggesting that there's little support, particularly among Americans, for a major U.S. role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, even as President Joe Biden imposed new sanctions and threatens a stronger response that could provoke retaliation from Moscow. Joining us now on the U.S.'s role in this conflict, we're joined by Wits University honorary international relations professor John Stremlau. Professor Stremlau, always a pleasure being in conversation with you. All eyes seem to be on not just perhaps Europe and some of the NATO allies, but specifically at the U.S. and the kind of response that they will have to this conflict. One interesting thought I heard earlier was that Russia is not just fighting Ukraine in this conflict, but is indirectly provoking and fighting America. Is that a fair reflection of what's happening here?
It's a fair reflection of your assessment of Vladimir Putin. He seems to have a real chip on his shoulder. He resents the collapse of the former Soviet Union in the way that it did and the loss of influence over the Eastern Bloc. He was an old KGB agent, as you know, and I used to go to the Soviet Union quite frequently as an exchange process that I was involved with to try to avoid conflict between the two countries. And he's very recognizable to me, and his mindset is really to get at the United States. And, of course, with his buddy Donald Trump in the White House and with the uncertainties around the politics of the U.S., he thinks the U.S. is in a weakened position. I must say that Joe Biden has surprised me by his skill in making the intelligence available, warning us all that there would be an invasion, which there has now happened. And the consequences of this are likely to be economic pain for Russia and for the rest of us, but whether it'll contain Putin's ambitions on getting the old Soviet bloc reassembled, I don't know, but it's not going to be easy for him.
What would you say is America's strategy in its response to what is happening right now?
Well, the response has been very calculating, and it's been, one, to provide assurances that U.S. is not sending troops into this conflict, but it will defend NATO members like the Baltic states because they're under Article 5 of the NATO treaty, and Ukraine is unfortunately not one of those members. And also, he's been very forthright in sharing intelligence and getting the allies on board and anyone else who's interested on what is happening with regard to Putin and his strategy. And he then was also very leveling with the American people and saying, look, the diplomacy must be our first and foremost concern and process, and I stay open to that, but I'm going to warn you that Putin is hell-bent on getting control over Ukraine, and he was right.
There's been criticism that given how long the situation has been unfolding, and you talk about the level of transparency that there has been and the fact that there was insight into the building up of the military capability and what was likely to stem from that there could have been more that the West did to prevent the situation from escalating to the point that it has today. Your thoughts?
Well, there'll be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, but don't forget that Putin lied about claiming not to ever intend to invade, that she was just trying to get assurances on Russian security as he understood it. And he also said that the exercises in Belarus, which is now a satellite of Putin's, and Lukashenko, the president, just won a fraudulent election in 2020. With Putin's help, that those exercises would end on Sunday, and they didn't. And in fact, now the 30,000 troops are heading toward Kiev and violating the territorial integrity and sovereign equality of Ukraine. So he has broken all the rules of the international order, and he says, well, you know, the United States has done that too, and there have been excesses on the part of the Americans over the years I've been very critical of. But on this issue and at this time, I think that he is posing a threat to the very values that have organized the African continent: sovereign equality, territorial integrity, association by voluntary democratic means. You can aggregate if you want. You can form a regional organization if you want. But let the people decide. And the people have absolutely decided that they want independence. They voted for it in '91. And they have continued to show that they are nationalistic in their intent. And that's good enough for me. If Putin wanted to bring them into the Russian orbit, let them have a referendum and vote for it.
Professor Stremlau, not surprising that when we look at this survey done among among Americans rather, that there doesn't seem to be much appetite for the U.S. to get involved in this conflict, especially not from a military perspective.
Well, most Americans couldn't put Ukraine on a map, and they are overwhelmingly interested in economic issues. It's not unlike the situation down here in South Africa. It was a joy to teach Mbeki's foreign policy toward Africa and the African Renaissance. I had great fun doing that, but look what happened to Thabo Mbeki when he lost touch with the South African people on fundamental economic issues. Democracies are hard to govern, and Putin does not have a clue what it's like to live in a democracy or to be respondent to popular opinion. He just is an autocrat and of the old school. And maybe the world has moved on. I sure hope so. But this is a real test right now. It's a real test.
Professor John Stremlau, let's leave it there for tonight. Thanks for your time.